then let's talk a little bit about another aspect to this. And there's another thing that there's another thing that a lot of people have asked us to how to put in information for certain funders around the various services that they provide. So this gets confusing because when we designed this feature, we realized that everything in LegalServer on the back end is called a service. So, but this is called services. I think we've kind of renamed it to phases, which maybe helps differentiate a little bit. But the idea here is that some people want to distinguish every time they do something in a case. Like we gave advice on this case, client called, we gave some advice. Later, we realized that we could help them by writing a letter. So we did a brief service. And then they called back a little bit later and they said that, the landlord in the case read the letter and was going to do X. So we gave them some more advice. And then some weeks later, they called back and said that they'd been locked out of their apartment or whatever. And so we decided we were going to take the case. And so now it's a full rep case. So in that example, there are a bunch of different services that have been provided. And prior to creating this feature I'm about to show, you would have had to, basically you would close a case and then reopen a new case and give a different level of service and close it and then open a new case and whatever. So you'd have 4 cases to represent the advice you gave, the brief service you gave, the advice you gave, and then the extended service you gave. So that seems like a nightmare to manage. So you could have also said, well, no, we just changed the level of service from advice to brief service and then back to advice, and then we change it to full rep, right? Which you could have logged all of that and tracked it that way as well. That's still an option. That might be how you solve that problem. But this agency in particular wanted a way to capture each of those things and be able to report it to different funders. So we built this block called, again, called services, which is a horrible name, which allows us to create different services and give each one of them its own funding code and a title and a start date and an end date and a resolution and outcomes and everything. So if you notice here, this testing investigation service that we created way back in 2013 is still not closed, but it has its own funding code and it has the ability to keep time against it and to add outcomes to it. So a service in this sense is kind of a sub-framework within a case that allows you to track the various things that you do on a case so that you can report them to different funders and track outcomes on that service. So in the example I gave, this one service might be advice, and you might charge it to funding code A. And the second service might be brief service, and you might charge that to funding code B. And then the third one is advice, and that one maybe goes to funding code C. And then the fourth one is extended rep, which goes back to funding code A. So that gives you a way of reporting and tracking each of those things that you're doing all within the case and closing it and giving outcomes on it and closing out the service, adding time to it. So when you're in timekeeping, you can say, oh, I'm putting time on this case, and it goes to that brief service that I'm recording or whatever. So this is the services block.